BBC Sounds.
Celebrating who we are with podcasts like Songs to Live By.
People appreciate it more. People feel it more.
Untold Legends. Aura Washington.
Aura was an athlete at a time when the broader world wasn't really paying attention to African-American athletes.
And Who Was Michael X?
We knew he was important, otherwise the president doesn't come to your house.
Celebrating black voices across the BBC. Listen on BBC Sounds.
BBC Radio 5 Live.
The voice of the UK.
Nicky Campbell.
Listen live, pause, rewind and discover with the BBC Sounds app.
Good morning. Good. Yeah. Welcome. This is going to be absolutely fascinating. We have got a room. It's the fire station. It's now an arts venue. We've got a former fire station arts venue full of absolutely amazing and fascinating people. I'm winning my audience over here. I'm doing my very best. Seriously, we live in not just interesting times, we live in really, really terrifying times. The turmoil, the political turmoil has been going on for not just the past few days, it's been going on not just for the past few weeks, it's been going on for months. It has indeed been going on for years. As a phone-in host, we used to sort of sometimes struggle for things to talk about. Right now, it is not a problem at all. And we want to hear from you on this. People here affected by it in Sunderland. That's what we're broadcasting from today. Inflation figures out this morning, 10.1%. That means that on average, the price you're paying for things at the moment is 10.1% more than this time a year ago. So the cost of living is rising at its fastest rate in 40 years. I'd be absolutely fascinating. In fact, it's not just interesting, it's necessary to know how it is affecting your lives. The people here in the fire station this morning. The Prime Minister, Liz Truss, maintains the answer isn't redistributing wealth through the tax system, but growing the pie to make life better for everyone in the UK. We are here. I'm broadcasting from Sunderland because the northeast of England has the highest proportion of households claiming state support. And inflation figures are, of course, used to set benefits and the state pension. There is talk that the state pension, there's the famous triple lock, there's talk that that may not go up by inflation, which will really hit the pockets of many pensioners. There is talk that benefits may not now go up by inflation as well, which is going to impact hugely on people. The new Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, he's basically put the budget into the waste bin. It's rip it up and start again. He's scrapped billions of tax cuts. He's cut back the help that households will get for energy bills. He's warning of more cuts to come. And the backdrop, of course, the rebuilding from the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, low unemployment, historically high rates of tax, and slowing global growth. So for the next 2 hours, we want to hear from you. And here's how to get in touch.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
Text 85058. Text will be charged at your standard message rate. Message on WhatsApp 08085 909 693. Visit bbc.co.uk/5 live terms for our terms of use.
So I think first off, let's. Who wants to have a word about what's been happening in the last week in politics in this country? Put your hand up if you want to make a contribution. I'm Jonathan Reynolds from Labour. I know you do. I know. Let's start. And the man from the Graham Miller, the man from the council, does as well. But let's go to you. Let's go to. I mean this courteously. We're going to go to a real person. Okay, first of all, Jonathan, if you don't mind. Kerry there in the centre. Can you believe what's been happening? Let's address Liz Truss. Dear Liz, what do you say, Kerry?
Well, they couldn't organise a pee up in a brewery, really, could they? They're about as organised as chaos, and I just think that they're taking us for granted, the electorate for granted, and they're just doing what they want to do when they do it. I mean, how many times can they change the Chancellor without a general election? And how many times can the leader be changed? And isn't it the highest thing now that Boris is going to come back? They want Boris back in. They tried to get rid of him. They'll just do anything to cling on to power regardless of the outcomes for the people in this country.
Who agrees with that? Oh, lots of hands went up over here. Can I come to you at the back there? Bernadette, if I can. We've got Sarah and Sarah on the microphones, and they're going to get a lot of exercise this morning. coming round. Hi, Bernadette.
Hello. Yeah, for me, it just seems like it's just a massive period of uncertainty. We're never going to know what's going to happen from one week to the next. And they're just basically messing with the people of Great Britain.
Messing with the people of Great Britain. Clap if you agree with that. If you don't agree with it, we want to hear from you. Dominic, tell us who you are, what you do.
Yeah, so I'm a Conservative councillor here in Sunderland.
Yeah.
We do exist. Yes, we do exist.
What is that like, being a Conservative councillor?
It's great. You can serve your community. You can try and make the city better and try and help people.
Yeah. And were you... did you have kind of the wind in your sails when you had that 80-seat majority and, Boris Johnson seemed to win a lot of people over with his undoubted campaigning skills and his charisma? You were on a bit of a crest of a wave then, were you?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, those were the good times. But when you're in government, you're not always going to be going through the good times.
Yeah. We're going to have Paul Scully from the Conservatives on a little bit later on. He's joining us at 9:30. But what would you say to the good people here, no doubt Conservative and Labour supporters and others, what would you say about your party over the last week? Over to you, Dominic.
Yeah, thanks, Nicky. It has been great, let's be honest. We're going through a worldwide economic crisis at the minute. What we need is stability. We've got a budget that was not great, a mini budget that was not great, but we're trying to put that right now. But you need to look across Europe and across the world as well. This is a worldwide economic crisis. Inflation, for example, is 10%, you've just said there. You look across Europe. In the Netherlands, it's 17, 18%. We've got interest rates rising across Europe. And
the budget made it worse for people in this
country. The budget
country.
did make it worse, don't get me wrong, and Liz Truss has apologised for that. But I think what we need now is stability. We don't need a general election. We don't need a leadership contest. Markets like stability. And instability is going to make things even worse and push up prices and interest rates even more.
Dominic's markets like stability, but the electorate do not like Liz Truss. Square that one.
Well,
how long she got?
How long she got? Well, potentially 2 years, but we shall see.
Does anyone believe that? Yeah. Who said yeah? Who said yeah? I heard a yeah. Yeah. Andrew. She's coming round to you. Sarah's got the mic. You've got power now.
I think right now, to be honest with you, we are literally living in like modern Tudor times. I'm not even kidding you, because back then everyone was plotting, scheming for political advancement, and it's the same now. I think personally, right, the Conservative Party are going to have to ride this wave. There is absolutely nobody right now who I could say taking over. Even though I like Penny Mordaunt and I really like Rishi Sunak because I did vote for him in the leadership contest. At the moment, I just think there's just absolutely no point in changing the at this moment in time.
Yeah, Kim is the Police and Crime Commissioner. Yeah, have the mic.
Hi, yeah. To be honest with you, I think that all of this drama that's going on in Westminster, that it's a crisis created in Westminster, and you can't say it's anything else, is creating havoc. We're all watching it on the television like it's a soap opera, but it's real people's real lives that we're playing with here. And in places like Sunderland, where the cost of living crisis is biting harder than anywhere else, we've got highest levels of child poverty anywhere in the country. We need real solutions, and we need a government that listens to people and gets on and does something about this. And we're not getting that. We're just getting infighting. And I think, frankly, we need a general election, and we need one now.
Okay. Oh, who? But I see you at the back. And I will come to you in just a second. But a general election, and we need one now. Anthony, are you the Conservative leader on the council?
I am the Conservative leader.
Yeah. How are you feeling about things at the moment?
Well, it's incredibly embarrassing. So I slightly disagree with Dominic, and I think we do need to change our leader. I'm not going to call for her to resign because it'll probably be gone by the time I finish the sentence. But I'm afraid I think Kim is wrong. She did a very good pitch to be the next mayor of the North East there, but we do not need a general election at the minute. Dominic is right about the stability, and it's not a crisis created in Westminster. It is global. But that isn't to say that what's happened in Westminster hasn't made it worse. So Dom was right about that point. The government has embarrassed itself. This is what happens when you take the ideology of radical free market think tanks and apply it to real life. Markets don't like radicalism, and the government has learned that the hard way.
Kim, very quickly, and I'll come to the lady who was laughing just behind you.
I think that we all know that there are global economic problems, but the government of the day's job is to respond to those in a way that provides provides that stability and helps to, frankly, feed the people that live in this country. And that's where we are at. A government that is so unstable that people here in this room are worried about whether or not they're going to be able to heat their dinner or whether they're going to be able to heat their home. And we have had 12 years of this now, 12 years of this Tory government. And yes, now it's a cost of living crisis driving people into poverty, but before that it was austerity that stripped away all of the public services. Our police forces lost £148 million under this Conservative government.
There's not going to be...
And it's now we're at crisis point.
All right, OK. He makes a political point there about your own political position, which is fair enough. But Anthony, your political position, it's, your party, it's really shaky at the moment. It's looking really, as you said, embarrassing. There ain't going to be an election, is there? Because you'd be wiped out.
We would be, and there'll not be an election for that reason, but for other reasons as well. I don't mind criticising my own party. I spent most of Boris Johnson's premiership calling for him to resign, but just...
Who was the last one you didn't want to resign then?
I like Theresa, but nobody else did, so in a slight minority there. Just to add to what Kim has said, the furlough scheme was the biggest intervention in this country's economy, and then the energy price cap, bigger still. So it's not like the Conservatives haven't gone against their own orthodoxy to provide for people. These have been huge, massive interventions, but they don't come for free, and part of what we're seeing is the need to pay this back. So we have to accept that we can't just have the good times and then not the bad times. We're going to have to find a way to weather the storm, as Jeremy...
When were the good times?
Well, the good times were when we had all of the free money. But that is not reality. Businesses being given...
Here's got a Susan behind you, go on.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to disagree with that respectfully, because last general election we had, Boris Johnson was elected with a mandate of 80-plus seats. Boris Johnson has now gone. That means that when you voted at the general election, you voted for a party led by Boris Johnson.
Did you vote for him?
No, I was rather left of centre. I voted Labour at the general election. And that was because I feel happier with the NHS in Labour hands than Conservative hands.
So what's your point?
My point is, now that Liz Truss is the leader of the Conservative Party, she does not have a mandate to govern from a general election. We need a general election for stability as well. I'm rather worried about these triple lock of pensions.
Well, we'll come to that in a minute.
When we get to that...
That was in the manifesto.
Yeah. When we get to that, if she's going to break the triple lock on that, that's them reneging on a pledge. We need an election for stability and so that the British public can say who they want to lead this country.
Anyone agree? Judy.
Hi.
Hello, Judy. Tell us who you are.
I'm Judy Butler, and I'm a nurse, a neonatal nurse of many years, technically retired, but can't quite leave it alone as yet.
Good for you. And what about, did you vote for Boris Johnson?
I did vote Conservative. I find it quite difficult at the moment because although I couldn't possibly bring myself to vote Labour because I just don't believe in socialist policies. But I'm not happy with the way things are at the moment.
OK, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to come to the point about triple lock pensions. We've got Kevin Peachy, our personal finance expert from the BBC here as well. Where are you, Kevin? We're with you. Just gen up, get the phone out, do a bit of a Google on the triple lock for us, and we'll be right with you. He knows it all off pat anyway. So we got Jonathan Reynolds from Labour over there. Can we, Sarah, can we take a microphone over to the man in the nice suit? There we are. What would you say to him about Labour?
My whole sort of ethos is that I feel it's very, very important to make it worthwhile for people to work for their money. And I feel sometimes that it isn't worthwhile for some people to work for their money and they take the easy option and they tend to say, well, why should I work when I can get just as much on benefits? I think it's for the genuinely needy people, the ones that can't work and can't work for various reasons, then yes, absolutely, they need all the support they can get. But there are definitely a layer of people in between who I think could do more for themselves. And
more self-reliance. What would you
yes.
say to Judy, Jonathan Reynolds from Labour?
Oh, good morning. First of all, it's lovely to be back in my hometown of Sunderland, and it's lovely to be back in this fire station. My dad used to work here, Nicky, so I used to come here as a child. It's changed a bit in the years in between. But look, in response to Judy, I would say, first of all, that there's no way the present system allows people to not work if they can. The people who can't work are either people who have a serious health problem and can't work, and the system is actually very punitive, much more punitive than it was in the past in terms of how it treats people, and actually, I would say, counterproductive in some ways. I would say if you look back to the 1980s when unemployment was very high here under the Thatcher and Major governments, benefits in real terms were much higher. They were about a quarter of average wages then. It's now about 15%. So when we're talking about uprating...
But she's talking about self-reliance. She believes there's something about Labour that doesn't... well, how would you put it?
I feel perhaps they don't encourage people to do more for themselves. They don't make it worthwhile for people to do more. People have got too reliant on handouts.
So let me turn it around, Judy. What was it about Boris Johnson that made you believe that he chimed with your beliefs?
It's just really, not especially Boris Johnson himself, but the ethos of the Conservative Party fits more with my beliefs of making it worthwhile for people to work hard and to get somewhere and to... Yes, to be able to keep more of what they earn.
Aspiration.
Aspiration.
And hard work rewarded. But of course, you now claim through your leader that you're the... sorry, I just stood on someone's foot. Sorry, Anthony. Anthony's Tory. He's got enough problems at the moment without me standing on his foot. Cheers, Anthony. You're now the political wing of the British people. So you're, it's Blair 2.0.
Well, look, what I'd say is, so I obviously stayed at my mum and dad's last night in Houghton, and... I think about them, they were married 50 years ago. They had the golden wedding anniversary this year. They didn't go on honeymoon, but they bought their own home instead of that. And that home that they had, that I grew up in, was the basis of our family's security, Judy. And I would say, if you understand that, I think people around here do understand things like that, you don't take the kind of risks which Liz Truss has taken, reckless risks that mean everyone in this country's mortgage is now higher than it would have been, business investment's going to be lower, the national finances are in a much worse state. I think if you really understand what it means to have that aspiration to own your own home and to have security for your family, you don't follow the kind of policies we've seen from Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng, if you can remember him. And fundamentally, when we talk about self-reliance, the government should understand that. It should understand about how people need, government policy to allow them to get on. And we haven't seen that for 12 years. We've seen in-work poverty increase to record levels. We've seen out-of-work people, in terms of their own health, diminish so badly because of the lack of funding for the health service and other public services. So I understand the ethos, and you put it really well in terms of what you believe in. But I would say, on your own terms, this government has absolutely failed, and that's why we need a change.
Well, let's go to Kevin. The triple lock pension today. They're saying that everything is on the table, Jeremy Hunt, in terms of cuts and in terms of revision as well from what was previously said. Just explain to us all, remind us about the concept of the triple lock.
Yes, so the triple lock is a promise to raise the state pension in line with the highest of average wages, inflation, or 2.5%. Now, clearly looking at the numbers, and the numbers that are relevant are the ones that come out today for inflation. So the highest of those will be 10.1%. And the assumption was, and the promise was that the state pension will rise next April in line with that inflation rate. But that is now off the table. If you like, everything's on the table for what might happen. In terms of pounds and pence, if you raise the state pension in line with average wages, which is 5.5%, compared with inflation, which is 10.1%, well, depending on what kind of pension you have, that's a difference of £440 a year or £340 a year. That's dependent on whether you have the new state pension or the old state pension. Very quickly, the new state pension is something that people got since April 2016. The old state pension is lower, but it is topped up by pension credit.
And the whole wages inflation debate applies as well. It's applicable as well, isn't it, to benefits?
Yes, so this is the other area where today's figures are so important. So with benefits, there are certain benefits, disability benefits, which have to rise in line with inflation, but there are others, most notable of which is universal credit for people who are of working age, which it is a decision for the government whether how much they put that up by, and clearly, and a lot of debate around about whether that is going to go up in line with prices or something else, for example, wages. Clearly, you've got to remember that there is a bit of a lag here. People are paying these higher prices now because inflation is so high, but these changes don't actually come in until April.
Okay, who wants to have a word on the triple lock as well? Any pensioners? Yeah, back there, Nigel. Sarah's rushing along with the microphone.
Yeah,
Morning, hi.
Hello, Nicky. I'm not retired yet, but I will be in a couple of years, and I'm relying on the state pension for my income. And obviously, I'm very alarmed by what's happening to the state pension.
And anyone else on the triple lock and the state pension? With somebody over here. Yeah, hi, Kevin. Hi, here we come.
I think the first important thing to understand is that a pension is an entitlement, and people have paid into a pension over many, many years, and people seem to be talking about it as though it's some sort of a handout. So I think that's a really, really important point that people must remember. And you're right, when you don't get an increase in line with inflation, effectively you're worse off. You're actually going to be worse off than you are at the moment. So the point gets a bit blurred, and because it's mixed in with benefits as though it's some sort of a handout. It's not, it's an entitlement.
Christine.
Well, I've just become a pensioner in May of this year.
No.
I've just received my pension.
What's that like?
I've waited as a lady, as a woman, 6 years. We had it went up for 66 from 60. So
what's it like when you get psychologically when you reach that point?
I'm 18.
I know you are. So you've got it early, right? Okay.
My husband, he got his January of this year.
Big moment in life, isn't it?
Oh, heavens, yes. But, you know.
Is that a good moment?
Now that we've had to rely on the money that he retired 2 years early. He retired at 64. So for the last 2 years, we've been funding our lifestyle out of his money that he left work with. And we've been waiting for this to pay for, hopefully, holidays, but now it's going to pay our gas, electricity. But in the years, I've always paid gas, electricity. 1980s, that's when we got the house, my mortgage rate was 7.9, and then it went up to 15%. We had to manage.
So the thing is, anyone else on this particular point, on pensions as well? There was, Henry. So who are you, Henry? I don't mean that rudely. It's just for our... Sorry?
Henry Moore. The thing is, when the triple lock was set, they didn't realise that perhaps inflation was going to go so high. Inflation at the moment is high, but it's temporary. So if we, in the UK, make everything go up by 10, 15%, and then it comes down, do we then claw back and go into a minus and say we've paid you too much? So I think that if inflation ran at this rate for a year or two, then maybe, yes, we could look at it. But I think the triple lock wasn't designed for such high interest rates.
So the problem is how you pay for it. Graham from Labour.
Or inflation.
Thanks very much, Nicky. When you're talking about pensioners are at that age now, they're not working. They rely on the government to ensure that they've got enough money to live and, in my opinion, to live well. So anything that would damage that income going to them, I think, is a terrible decision by government to consider cutting the income of pensioners, at the same time not prepared to commit to giving the unemployed a lift up. Those are
well,
the
let's
people.
pick that up with Jonathan Reynolds from Labour. And please put your hand up to come in on this. And if anyone wants to ask Jonathan Reynolds a question, you're very free to do so. We've got Paul Scully from the Conservatives kindly joining us after 9:30. These calls to uprate benefits by inflation and also pensions in these extremely difficult times. A 10% rise of DWP's social security budget would be roughly £22 billion, right? How on earth would you pay for that?
Well, first of all, if a government makes a pledge, I think they should stick to it. I think that's the reasonable point.
The times change, and you have to change with the times.
Hang on a minute. If you put in a triple lock, you're accounting for any circumstance. You're saying wages, prices, inflation. So you're giving people a very clear commitment. Everyone knows what this means.
But it temporarily changed because of the circumstances of COVID, when there was a sudden boost in the jobs market, right?
Well, there was a specific issue about how furlough affected the data.
There's lots of specific issues around at the moment, isn't there?
But this is... Look, inflation this morning hitting 10.1%. Let's bear in mind that's an aggregate figure of a basket of goods. So if it's food inflation,
How
it's
would you
actually
pay for it?
14.6%. So, these are the real pressures people face. You can't go and do your shopping and say,
Benefits.
this is a temporary matter.
Sure, I know that. But benefits up by inflation, 22 billion. How would you pay for it?
On paying for it, it is government policy. It is already factored into the Red Book, which is how they score it in. If they want to change that, come and tell us. Come and give us the figures. But we haven't.
If you want to pay for it, come and tell us. How would you pay for it?
Well, it is already in the national accounts. The triple lock and benefits uprating is the way of doing things. If they want to change that, bring us and tell us what the difference will be. But don't try and ask people to make decisions in the public as you're the government if you're not willing to tell people with proper forecasts and transparency about the decisions that you're making.
Dominic, Conservative on the council.
Yeah, I mean, I think this just sums up Labour. It's shiny, happy ideas, but how are you going to pay for this?
It's your manifesto pledge.
We've
It's
just
your
gone
pledge.
through. You can say it's a manifesto pledge as much as you like, but where is the money coming from? How are you going to fund this? It's as simple as that. We had the furlough scheme cost us £180 billion, for example. The price guarantee has cost us probably about £100 billion. That needs to be paid back. Whenever anyone sits here and says, we need to give free this, free that, or uplift this, uplift that, it needs to be paid for. And if you want more borrowing, which is probably how you're going to pay for it, that risks pushing up inflation again.
I must
which
just
then
come back
risks
on this.
pushing up interest rates, which gets us into an even
If
worse situation.
we had been doing this a month ago, there wouldn't have been a single question about cuts or return to austerity. The fact the government can't pay for its own pledges
Where is
is
the money
because
coming from,
of the
Jonathan?
economic
You
crisis.
can sit there, but where is the money coming from?
Because you have pushed up the cost of borrowing.
Lisa
you
Nandy,
have pushed up the impact on the finances.
Spoke on Radio 5 this morning and said that they wouldn't bring any more government debt. Where is it going to come from?
We expect you, if you make a pledge and you
answer the question, John.
Well,
Where is it
first
coming
of
from?
all, if you replace this government with a Labour one, you'd immediately have more market confidence. The financial envelope would be bigger
That's absolutely
because
rubbish.
you're not
Where would
Liz
it come
Truss
from?
and you're not the latest chancellor
Where's
that you've
the-
got.
where's
but
the
I have
money
to
coming
say,
from?
it is outrageous for you and the government and the Conservative Party to have done this, to have caused so much damage to the national finances
money coming
as well
from,
as
Jonathan?
households, and then say all of you pensioners, working people,
Which
households,
taxes
you're
are you
going to
gonna
have
raise?
to pay for it.
Where
Well,
are you
we would,
getting
for
this
instance,
from?
abolish the non-dom rule, which allows richer people to pay a
14
specific rate of tax. That's
22 billion.
3.2 billion.
Gentlemen,
Private
gentlemen,
equity more,
gentlemen,
we would,
gentlemen. Thank you.
Sorry, Nicky.
What we do, we love the lively debate. We get lots of points when we hear the lively debate. We hear the energy and we hear the passion and we hear the arguments, and it's very important. And I want more of it. The only reason I call things to a temporary halt is that imminently we are to be joined by the news channel. And I went too soon. I'm not to blabber for another 30 seconds now. There it is 9:29:28. So what we want to do is find out about your lives as people who are on benefits, people who are struggling. So, Nicola, you're in that situation, yeah? Are you? You're not. Are you in that situation, Amanda? Right, I'll talk to you about it. And Denise from Citizens Advice as well. Are you? I'll find, Nicola, you've got hairdressers, haven't you? And also over here, Carla, you're in that situation, are you? And Eleanor, too. Yeah, I'll be with you in just 1 minute. And we're coming right now. And it's a lively debate this morning. We're joined by the news channel and we're on BBC Two. We are in Sunderland, an amazing audience with all sorts of different views, but everybody does have a view on what is happening to our country at the moment and in our country at the moment. What's it like living through this cost of living, the cost of living problem? Some call it the cost of living crisis. What is it like having to deal with it at the moment? Hi, Eleanor. Good morning to you. Tell me about your situation in life.
Hi, so I have a daughter who has Down syndrome. We have made some changes. We kind of looked at our costs in the household, and we did have to make some changes, whether it was food, heating. She has kind of sensory needs around her food, so we can't just totally cut things out and change things there. We can't afford to just have the heating off because she has a history of getting quite ill and things as well. But above that, one of the things that I do is volunteer with a charity that we set up to help families with school uniform.
That's a big problem and challenge for people at the moment, isn't it? But it's all about kind of self-esteem at school, being like your peers, isn't it?
Absolutely. And whether you miss out on education. So when children were going back to school in September, we had a family get in touch, and it was actually the auntie of this child. And she contacted me and said, can you help my niece? She hasn't been able to go back to school because her mum can't afford her school uniform. She is missing out on her education. Her mum, she clothed her 2 younger children with their school uniform. She works. So to go back to kind of the arguments about people working, she works hard. She could not afford the cost of the school uniform. And as a result, her daughter was missing out on her education. That is not right in any way. Is that right at all?
And what about, it's your son, is it, who's...
My daughter.
Sorry, I do apologize. And what's it like with the heat in the house and having to keep things warm?
We just, so she has a history of pneumonia. If she gets ill, she goes downhill very quickly. And we know that kind of keeping her warm just helps keep her safer. So we can't just say, well, everyone put an extra jumper on. We have to make sure that it is keeping warm. Obviously, as it goes into winter, through the night it gets colder. We look at ways to kind of keep her room warm, even if we're not keeping the rest of the house warm. We are in the situation where we can manage with that, but we have had to make some adaptations. We obviously, so she gets DLA. We obviously got the additional payment there. It's not going to go a massive amount, but it did kind of help towards those costs.
Okay. Yeah, sorry I said son rather than daughter, but you put it out really well. Hi, Carla, how are you doing? Welcome.
I tend to, I've got a small heater and I tend to carry it around whichever room I go into, kind of thing. I can't afford to put my heating on. I live on £250 per month. You know, when you pay for broadband and then you've got food and all the rest of it, it doesn't leave very much. I'm just very lucky that I've got friends that will take me out and make sure that everything... Sorry.
No, it's all right, absolutely right. It's so tough for people at the moment. We completely understand. But you've got friends who are helping you.
Yeah.
You can't beat having amazing friends, can you?
Yeah, exactly. It's just not good enough, you know.
What needs to happen? What needs to change? And who needs to change it?
Well, the government, basically, because at the end of the day, what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to do it? I've got 2 cats. I don't have any children, thank goodness. God knows what I'd be doing if it was up to having to clothe and feed a child. I wouldn't be able to do it.
Can I ask your politics? I mean, what's your own...
I voted for Berger because I voted for Brexit. So that's that. But
what made you do that? Did you think, well, we need something new, we need something different?
Well, why be spending money overseas and stuff like that when we need it over here?
Do you miss Boris Johnson? Do you think if he were in charge, things might be different still?
I know that he was in the wrong to do what he did with the parties and all the rest of it. But then again, who didn't? I bet you there were a lot of people. Yeah, but
Sorry, Christine, what?
We had not parties like he did, but my birthday party, we were at the front of the house, tables, everybody was separate.
Do you know what? It's an interesting little diversion, and I had some incredible phone-ins on the whole party situation. Let's take it back to now. I appreciate you mentioning that because you say that he had his faults, but, you know, what do you think of... Go on, Carl.
Well, at least he managed to get things done.
Did he?
Okay. Whereas you look at Liz Truss, what is she doing?
Anyone want to hear her to respond to that? Oh, look on the screen, everybody. We're joined by Paul Scully, the business secretary. Yeah, am I right in saying that? Just off the top, no?
I'm Minister for Local Government now, Nicky.
All right, sorry.
So I moved away from
Changes on a daily basis, Paul.
A couple of months ago.
Are you the Chancellor yet? I'm going to ask you that. Anyway, thank you very much. And it's all fair that we gave Jonathan Reynolds a round of applause earlier on for joining us. Let's be politically balanced here. Welcome. What a Kazi, your party at the moment. What an absolute embarrassing mess.
Look, Nicky, we know things are really difficult. We've just been hearing those stories, and that's going to be replicated up and down the country, and that's why we are doing everything we can to put in the energy price guarantee that is there, that started, that people are starting to see the benefits from that.
But now it's only for 6 months.
It is, because what we want to do, we want to use those 6 months to make sure that it can be targeted rather than having one blanket reaction that we did at the beginning. If we can have something that's more targeted at people like Eleanor and other people that really need that help, rather than more wealthy people that are somewhat insulated from the situation, that's got to be all for the good, because it means that the people that are suffering most will see the biggest benefit, and that's what I think we all agree should happen.
You were singing the praises of Liz Truss, saying that her plan was just what the nation needed. I was reading an article from the London Evening Standard that you wrote. You were singing her praises from the rooftops. Do you stand by that?
Well, the fact, what I'm saying there is we needed to change, because you go through the same process. We could see how things were building up, these kind of issues were building up. And then, if you have the same solutions, you're going to end up with the same results. So we needed to try and break that.
So that's been scuppered now, Paul, hasn't it?
It has. No, absolutely.
Was it a mistake to scupper it?
No, I think, I think we got to, there's two things that are within her plan. And one thing absolutely remains is that drive for growth. Why? Because as well as giving this initial support now to tackle the issues that we've just been hearing about, we've got to make sure that that we grow more resilience into the
Everybody
economy.
says that, broadly speaking, that they want growth, they want a more successful economy. So that's a nebulous, meaningless statement. Oh, well, her central philosophy is the drive for growth. Find a politician, and there are some on the fringes that say, actually, I don't want growth.
Well, look, the statement is, but it's the what you're doing about it that isn't. And actually, productivity in this country has been comparatively slow compared to other countries because of transport issues, because of infrastructure is too slow to get started and start building. We're developing investment zones to actually have a stimulus in particular areas around the country. There's been hundreds of applications by councils up and down the country. But I know that people need the support now. They can't wait for that growth. They want to make sure that they can pay their energy bills. Hence, we've got the energy price guarantee. We heard that bills were going to be going up for a typical household, an average household, something like £6,500 a year.
Well, there is a problem Paul, there's a problem, of course, for people, and extreme concern for people. After 6 months, what will happen then? There is massive anxiety for people, panic for a lot of people about the ending, perhaps, of the triple lock as well, and all the things. I'm going to get some people to ask you questions here, and there's lots of people who are very much against Liz Truss's in the studio, very much against Liz Truss's whole political philosophy. Are they the enemies of? Are they the anti-growth coalition?
No. I mean,
because she had a sort of Trumpian list of enemies that she listed, and I'm just wondering if any of these people were in that.
No. If you're just talking about the triple lock, if you're talking about these other things, of course they're not. But there are people who will, as I say, just try and keep the status quo. And if you try, I used to run businesses, small businesses. I was self-employed. The reason I was self-employed is I could disrupt the kind of sectors that I was involved in. So as two of us running a small business was winning businesses off really big-sized businesses because we were doing something different. So
I got you. So it's the
mindset thing.
Mindset, the people against dynamism. So the other day, just very quickly, David Attenborough. Who admires David Attenborough here in the studio? But clap if you admire David Attenborough.
I do.
And you, Paul? He said, anyone who says we can have growth after growth after growth, given our finite resources, is mad. Is David Attenborough part of the anti-growth coalition?
No, it's not. It's not about, because it's how you can grow sustainably. And what you've seen over the last 10 years in particular is the growth of renewables within this country. The fact that we've actually finally woken up to the need for more renewable energy. The fact that the UK is actually leading offshore wind, for example, and battery technologies is to be applauded. That's creating new jobs. That's growth, both sustainably.
So, but if there's a balance and if the environment is cared for as well and biodiversity, the two can be bedfellows, if you like. Right, listen, I think you had a similar chunk to Jonathan there. I think that's fair enough. So thank you for being there, Paul. We've got some questions, as we had questions for Jonathan. And so Kerry, right in front of the screen there. Kerry, that's Kerry there. What would you like to ask Paul?
Morning, Paul. Do you not actually feel ashamed that I seen a segment on the news last night and a 65-year-old woman was crying because she couldn't use a toaster. That lady over there has just been crying about the cost of living. Are you not ashamed of a party that our older generation are crying in fear of how they're going to survive and live? Are you not ashamed of that?
Look, it's not about being ashamed. It's about trying to work out how I can act. I really hate the fact that there are people suffering the way that you've just described. I didn't see that piece. And we've got to do something about it. We can't just sit there
You've
and...
been in power for 12 years. How can you say we're trying to do something? You've been in power for 12 years.
Kerry, what we haven't had in those 12 years, the lead up to those, we haven't had 2 years when we basically switched off the
We've had
global
12
economy.
ye're of austerity.
No, but we're
defend
literally
that?
every single country in the world turned off their economy effectively for 2 years. We spent £408
Can you
billion
just
pounds.
change the same drivel over and over again by blaming Ukraine and blaming Russia and blaming COVID? You have been in power for 12 years. 40% of children in the North East live in poverty. Are you not ashamed of that?
No, Kerry, what I'm saying to you is that we're trying to act targeting our support towards those people. Now, having just nearly half
You
a
need
trillion...
to be on a stage as a clown. You have not got a clue. You want to come and live in the North East?
Okay, I tell you
month?
what. Steady. Fair dues. Have a robust exchange. I know you're upset. Have a robust exchange, but let's hear what Paul has to say in response. And there's other people who want to ask questions. I'll tell you what, Paul. I'll move, if I may, to somebody else who wants to ask a question. And it was your good self.
Kaylee.
I can't see your name.
Kaylee.
Kaylee, hi. How are you doing?
I just can't stand this whole narrative of growth. Like, who is it actually growing money for? Like, yeah, it grows money for the CEOs, the big bosses in the buildings. We've lifted the cap on bankers' bonuses. How's that going to affect me? How's that going to affect people on benefits? How's that going to affect people? Yeah, but I know you're saying in front of me, got the council saying in front of me, it's going to bring more people in. Yeah, but that's trickle-down economics. That doesn't work, does it? It doesn't, to the Treasury. Okay, what about the people who can't heat their homes? People who can't heat their homes. It's not for us. Then you've got energy companies. Their profits aren't being taxed. You've got £7 billion on energy companies.
All right, Kaylee, fair dues. Let's let Paul... Paul's come to the wicket. Let's see what he has to say.
Yeah, if the way we need to approach growth is not about just enriching a few CEOs. It's about making sure that we can get people good jobs, sustainable jobs, people that can work more hours, but able to work more hours. I don't think it's the right that the state should be topping up people's people's incomes when employers could be doing so, because the employers are getting away with not paying good enough wages in some areas. We need to do more about that. So I was, for example, in Ebbsfleet in Kent a couple of weeks ago, looking at one of the proposed investment zones down there. That attracts new businesses in there. It attracts international money as well as money from around the country, new homes, new jobs for the people of Kent. So it's about working in collaboration, not trickle down. It's not just sort of some pat on the head platitudes to ordinary hard-working people. This is something that we want to build sustainable.
Can you do it? I suppose the political question is, will people see the difference in the 2-year time frame between now and the election? And will people stick with Liz Truss? And will you stick with Liz Truss? Thank you very much, Kaylee. Let's get a couple more, if you don't mind, Paul. Here's Amanda. Hi, Amanda. Tell me first of all about your life at the moment and the benefits that you're on.
I'm a single mum with an ASD son, and I'm on ESA, which was a legacy benefit, and on PIP, low rate PIP. My son doesn't get any money he used to get DLA, but he doesn't anymore. And I have to pay for a new car to drive him to Shields, to college every day. And I'm struggling, it's getting to the point where I can't really afford the petrol. I'm relieved he's off today because of this, because I can't afford the petrol. I had to get a car so I could drive him there. Buses are being bad. The metro's off at the moment and he can't go on his own because he has dyslexia and can't understand the timetables, things like that. So I have to stay there while he's through Shields for college because he has to have somebody to pick him up at the moment because of safeguarding and things. And I just can't afford petrol and things. And where the food's getting more expensive, it's almost doubled. We don't drink, we don't smoke. Nobody in the house does. My mum's on her pension and my sister's not been well. And people think that if you're disabled, you're lazy, and you're not.
I thought we were chatting beforehand. I mean, everyone find this interesting and indeed disturbing. Just when we were all sitting down and having a cup of coffee, you were telling me you were a bit shaken when you came in because you said, the cab driver who brought you here today. Tell everybody what he was saying.
He was saying that about people being on universal credit, and he said about disabled people should be able to work, they can do something, no matter what it is, and I had felt I had to justify myself.
Oh, you okay?
Sorry. I'm really sorry.
No, don't worry.
I had to justify the fact I've been in pain for 24 hours a day for over 20 years. And I want to work, tried the business and everything.
It just shows you there's some harsh attitudes there from people. I wonder where those attitudes come from, and what right he had to say that to you when you coming. He doesn't know about your life, does he? He doesn't know anything. Do you come across that a lot?
Quite often, yes. I think that we're lazy, and other people, if they can't work, we should be working. And it's not that you don't want to. My sister and I tried our own business, but we couldn't manage it.
So what about, and you don't have to, I'm asking people about their politics, and when I do that, you can tell me to go away in no uncertain terms, but I am interested where people are at the moment, where they were before and where they might be in the future. What about where did you vote?
I voted Conservative because I don't like Keir Starmer. I don't trust him. I don't trust any of them, but I suppose Boris, at least, he was a bumbling fool, but at least he did get some things sorted out. And he did promise with benefits and pensions.
Did you like something about him? Yeah.
Not that much, no. But a little bit more than Liz Truss, because she's just a Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah. Okay, Paul, you're here. You're meant to be here for people like Amanda. You heard what happened to Amanda on the way here. Appalling. Yeah. Those sorts of attitudes, utterly reprehensible. But you're here for her. What are you going to... What would you say to Paul? I know you can see him on the screen over there.
Why would there rather disabled people be dead? We're not animals. We've got bills to pay. We've got children. I've been told one time that disabled people shouldn't be allowed to have children.
Who said that?
A nurse at an ESA assessment.
Oh, goodness me. Okay, taking it away from that is utterly disgusting. Some of the things that have been said. Are you okay? Yeah. Right. But Paul, this is a general message. I know you've got to go, and I really appreciate you being here with us this morning and taking the questions. There's some politicians, Jonathan's done it, you've done it. Some politicians will not do this. You have done it. Credit to you for that. Are you there? Convince people that you are there for people like Amanda.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Because, this is why I got into politics. I'm here speaking to you because I was sitting there muttering at my newspaper in the 90s, having lost a business in the recession then, and myself as self-employed, as I say. I wanted to do something about it. I cannot do everything, but I will always try. Now, with Amanda, what I would say, I don't know her exact circumstances. She talked about being on a legacy benefit, maybe see if there's a reason why she might not get more money on universal credit. She rightly says that not every disabled person can work, and that's exactly what the welfare state is there to pick up, to protect. But what we've done over the last decade is to allow disabled people who can work to actually have adjustments in their workplace and be able to get back into work. And there's more disabled people working than ever before. But clearly, as you rightly say, not everybody is in that position, and we shouldn't be making judgments on that basis. We should just be able to help people that we can.
How long is Liz Truss going to last? Is she going to lead you into the next election, Paul?
Look, what we're doing at the moment, Nicky, is I saw her last night. I've been speaking to lots of my colleagues.
Oh, is she?
Working through the immediate situation. That's what she's planning to do. She's planning to do that, but having helped people, and we've got a really crucial 2 weeks now to get to that next spending review.
What do you think? Will she lead you into the next election?
Well, if we get this next bit right, then I see no reason why not. But we've got to get this next bit right. Why not? It's going to be difficult. Well, because
this is not a ringing endorsement.
No, well, because I'm just being practical with you, Nicky. I'm just trying to be straight for you. This is a difficult time for the party because it's a difficult time for the country, and we will be judged on our actions. It's not about warm words. It's not about what I say now. It's about what we do for people now. As you rightly say, that come 2 years, it's can Amanda, can Kaylee, can the others actually feel that there's been a market change for them and they can see some prospects for the next 5 years as well?
Okay, Tony, have you got to go now? I'm not sure of the timings. It's
I've got a few more minutes if you want.
All right, oh, that's good. Well, Jonathan, we'll let you come back in a second as well. But we want to keep it like the public speaking to the politicians as much as we can. So, I mean, if I don't give you enough of a shout at me. Well, let's go along the line. There's 3 hands up here. Nigel, first off.
Isn't the problem simply that the Conservative Party MPs can't reconcile themselves to whoever their leader is? They've all got ambitions to be the leader, and they just cannot rest until they are. The divisions we're seeing within the Conservative Party are a political problem for the Conservative Party. They just can't reconcile themselves to whoever.
A lot of factions. Richie, hi.
Hi, Nick. Can I just ask Paul Scully there? With nurses getting a 72 pence a week pay rise, they've got food banks in the hospitals and they've got to pay for the car parking. Paul, how about when you got a pay rise of £2,000, you get £3,400 towards your energy and you get expenses towards your fuel? How do you feel about that? You're not concerned about that?
Well, I mean, to be fair, I don't, because I commute.
You do, Paul.
No, I'm a London MP. No, just let me explain. I'm a London MP, so I don't have
I'm on about other MPs, Paul.
Yeah,
3,400.
All right, okay. On that point, you asked the question. Answer the question.
I was just clarifying. But look, I know it's difficult. What happens with public sector workers is that there's obviously a pay review process that goes through that, and sometimes when they do that, they are looking at inflation at the time, and there's a bit of a lag. So what you tend to find is that you may well find that next year it's a different situation when they have their pay review at that point. But what has to happen, the Treasury, when they look at it, is they have to look at the effect on giving several hundreds of thousand people, indeed millions of people on the public sector an inflation-busting pay rise, because that in itself embeds the inflation. So we're trying, as I say, I've been talking about the fact we're trying to help people now. What we don't want to do is to be under these pressures for a moment longer than we need be. We're expecting inflation to be going down because of the situation with energy and Ukraine, the tight labour market, cost of goods, middle way through next year. If we don't get this right, then that won't go down, and we'll be in the same problem this time next Christmas.
Listen, thank you, Paul. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Show your appreciation. Thank you. All right, Jonathan, we'll get Jonathan Reynolds shortly. There's Paul Scully from the Conservative front bench. Anyway, thoughts on that? We'll get round with some thoughts on that. Denise, just remind us what you do. Denise Irving.
I'm the manager of Citizens of Iceland.
Busy at the moment.
Very busy, yes. Last October, we've seen 323 in our drop-in services. In the first week in October, we've seen 206.
Yeah, okay. And
So
this
very
has really shot up. What are people asking you? What are people wanting from you?
Basically, people are looking for benefit checks to see if they can increase their income, because people simply can't afford the essentials. They can't afford the energy, and they can't afford the food bills, and they're just not managing everybody that's pretty much coming through our doors on a deficit budget.
Where's this going?
Serious crisis. We are already in crisis. We've been talking about the heat and eat for a number of years now. We are at a point where people are self-disconnecting and they're simply not putting the heating on, or they're going without food.
Lots of voices. Kevin.
Hi. I wanted to switch tack a little bit. I think there's a real problem with democracy that's happened over the past week, in that there's been a coup. I stood for the Brexit Party in 2019 because I was worried about the betrayal of the two parties, the people who voted for Brexit. And
So poll out yesterday, 56% of people, what was it? But there's a huge swing back to Remain. I think 56% of people who voted for Brexit regretted it. I'm sorry if I get it wrong, but it didn't look good for Brexit, the particular poll of public opinion.
Some people did. I don't, because I think it's important for us to be able to recall our politicians, and we couldn't recall them from Europe. And one of the concerns that I have over the past few days is that there's been a coup. Effectively, Jeremy Hunt is the Prime Minister. He has taken over. He's de facto Prime Minister. Nobody voted for him. People voted for Boris in 2019 because he promised to deliver Brexit, and yet we're being totally betrayed by the switches around, besides the terrible aspects that people have been talking about. I think it's a deficit in democracy.
Okay.
It should be the people of Britain who actually rule this country who are in charge.
Got you. We might go on. This is about 59% of people think that Brexit has made matters worse. 20% no difference. 14% say that Brexit has made matters better. That was a poll yesterday. Apologies for not remembering the particular figures. Let's get lots of voices. We haven't heard from you, Andrea. Yeah. Hi there.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Andrea Bell, the founder of Sunderland Community Soup Kitchen. Pretty prominent in the city at the moment. Everybody knows us, everybody's using us. My opinion's slightly different to everybody else's because our work's very much in the middle of ping-pong of politics. So we'd like to sit on the bench because the people we're working with, their lives are impacted by somebody else's decision. They have no control. It's only things that everybody else has mentioned: food, energy, fuel for a lot of the working people that we're helping now. So again, my question to everybody from probably a peasant's kind of view is, can you just make a decision that actually does some positive for the people that we're supporting? It's food services have this impression that it's somebody who's of a certain class. It's not. It's working people. It's unemployed people, it's people with addictions, yes, and that they deserve the same support as someone else. So again, can somebody just make a decision that actually makes a positive impact on the people who are having to use our service? Go.
Hi, Nicola. It's not Super Memory Man. People have got if you're listening on the radio, people have got their name tags on. Tell us about yourself.
So I'm Nicola Wood. I've been in business in Sunderland since I was 18. So I've got a good understanding of our area. As a local business owner, I would like to turn on the TV and not see the constant unease and the squabbling. I would like to have 1 week in my business where I know what my outgoings will be because the price is not rising all the time. 5 years ago, I set up a business that helps people when they've lost their hair. And just like the lady was saying there from the soup kitchen, we see this cost of living crisis is not just about people on the breadline. This is about people who, obviously people who lose their hair through cancer treatment, etc.
You're in the hair business, as
I
it
do,
were.
yeah. So I have.
What about wigs? People who.
So I own a wonderful wig company.
Oh, are you?
Yeah,
right.
we serve the whole of the North East NHS when you lose your hair medically. So these people are already going through the worst time of their life. Then you give them cancer, and all of a sudden they are completely poor. They've got no way to pay for anything. They come to us for a wig, and that's. Everybody's affected. The cost of our wigs has had to go up, but that affects people. You know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you're from a wealthy family or a poor family. If you are ill, that your choices are taken away from you.
Yeah, talking about the distance, we're just coming out to the news, but talking about the distance between things. How do you feel, Andrew, the people that you see on a daily basis when you hear that the banker's bonus cap is to be lifted, and the original idea to lower the rate of tax for the wealthiest in society? Viscerally, how did you react to those policies? Very quickly.
From my side, there always never seems to be that simple solution. One says one thing, the other says the other thing, and all we see at ground level is the impact, as I say, of someone else's bad decision, in my opinion.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. We have more to come. You'll notice that the clock is approaching 10. We're going to have the news.
BBC Radio 5 Live. With the headlines at 10 o'clock, I'm Lisa McCormick. Prices are rising at their fastest rate for 40 years. The rate of inflation, which is measured by the Consumer Prices Index, is 10.1%. That's up 2% from the previous month. The increase has been attributed to rising food prices. Amanda used to work in a hospital until a head injury 5 years ago, and she now receives disability benefits.
It can be really difficult to try and have the money. Sometimes I've been left with £30 in the account for over a week to pay everything and just don't have it. It's distressing. I'd have liked to be a good role model for my son and can't be. I'd love to work. Nobody would employ me.
The Prime Minister will face questions from MPs in the Commons this afternoon for the first time since scrapping almost all of her economic plan. Liz Truss has described the decision to drop her package of tax cuts as painful. An independent review will be published later into maternity services at East Kent Hospital's NHS Trust. The inquiry heard from 200 families with cases dating back to 2009. They say the concerns were repeatedly brushed aside. The Trust says it expects the report to be harrowing and insists that the findings will be used to improve services. Man United's Mason Greenwood's been granted bail by a court this morning. The footballer, who's accused of attempted rape, coercive control and assault, has been told by a judge on Monday that he would be remanded in custody until he appears before Crown Court on the 21st of November. The RNLI says its volunteers are having to deal with increasingly complex and traumatic rescues in the English Channel. 35,000 people have crossed to the UK in small boats in the last year alone. Simon Ling is the RNLI's head of lifeboats.
These are very flimsy, poorly constructed rubber dinghies carrying men, women and children in very difficult conditions, transiting one of the busiest shipping channels in the world. It's very chaotic with screaming and panic, mothers holding up babies and in some cases throwing the babies at our lifeboat crew to catch, such is the level of distress.
And the services on the M6 at Rugby in Warwickshire have been named the best in Britain. The site was the only one to get a 100% satisfaction rating in a survey by the passenger group Transport Focus. 31,000 visitors were asked to give their views on things like toilets, staffing and the value of food and drink. That's the news headlines this morning. With the sport now, here's Ben Croucher.
Good morning. Some breaking news in the last hour. The England seamer Reece Topley has been ruled out of the T20 World Cup. He ruptured ankle ligaments in training on Monday. Ireland boosted their prospects of reaching the next stage with a 6-wicket win over Scotland this morning. Curtis Campher's unbeaten 72 saw them chase down 177 with an over to spare. Both play their final games on Friday. And the West Indies are 97 for 5 in the 14th over against Zimbabwe in the other game in their qualifying group.
Hello, I'm Nihal Arthanaika. And if you haven't heard the Headliners podcast on BBC Sounds, quite frankly, where have you been? I bring you in-depth conversations with some of the biggest names in entertainment, sport, culture and the arts.
Rita Wilson is here.
Manchester United legend Gary Neville, Michael Palin, Vicky Patterson, Jarvis Cocker, Selene Henry's on the show, Alex Scott, Arsenal legend.
The first thing the taxi guy will say to me is, I'm not supposed to like you, I'm Spurs.
And this afternoon, I'll be catching up with comedian and actor Rob Delaney. Listen from 1 on 5 Live or catch up afterwards on the BBC Sounds app.
BBC Radio 5 Live.
The voice of the UK.
Nicky Campbell.
Listen live, pause, rewind and discover with the BBC Sounds app.
Well, welcome back. We're on the radio. We just got to do the proper welcome to BBC Two and the news channel as well. Here we come.
Welcome back to the fire station. Wow. Some really, really interesting conversations happening this morning as we talk about the cost of living. We're talking about energy. Brexit has been mentioned. We're in Sunderland. It's a fascinating part of the world. Politically, it really is, and historically too. Richard, man from the BBC, I do believe. Just remind people who you are.
I'm the political editor for the BBC in this region.
Right. Tell us about this region.
Well, it's a region, obviously, that's gone through quite a lot of political change in recent times. We're in a Labour city in Sunderland. There are 3 Labour MPs here. But, of course, in the 2019 election, Boris Johnson achieved a better result than any Conservative leader had achieved since the 1930s, better than Margaret Thatcher did in terms of winning over people in the North East away from the Labour Party. So there's been a significant change. And we've heard already in the audience, haven't we, some people who have actually suggested that they voted Conservative because they believed in Boris Johnson, who of course now is gone.
Carla beside you being one of them.
Yeah, so now obviously the challenge for the Conservatives in this region is how do they persuade people to stick with them? In a series of seats up and down the region, they need to win to stay in power at the next general election when the person who achieved this kind of political alchemy, really, turning people who'd never voted Conservative before in the North East into people who are prepared to do it, how do they persuade them to stick with them?
Very Brexit.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Sunderland, famously that night, it was the first place that gave the real indication that the country was going to vote.
That's when the glum faces started on the Remainers, and those glum faces remained.
Yes, yeah. I was here for that vote that night. Now, but of course, Brexit still matters to people. I don't think, I think you did a show of hands earlier about whether people had changed their minds. I didn't see many people who had. I think it was 1 or 2. But of course, the cost of living issue, which we're talking about now, has superseded all that, I think. I don't think the Conservatives can rely on, that their Brexit policy, if you believe they've got Brexit done anymore. They need to provide answers to some of the questions that people have been asking here today, which is how do I get through this situation and be able to keep life and limb together?
Jonathan Reynolds from Labour, just while we're on that particular topic, Brexit has, yes or no, it has affected GDP, hasn't it? Yes or no? Yes. To what extent? 4%?
I mean, figures a bit abstract. The business investment has gone down. It has been a devaluation in sterling. But I don't think, to be frank, knowing people who did vote for Brexit around here, that it was the economy that was always, there was a lot of different things. You've got to respect that, Nicky, and understand it's not just...
You respect democracy, of course. You do respect democracy. But if we were to have growth, some people are saying, and indeed Tobias Ellwood from, I nearly said from your party. No, he's from the other lot. Tobias Ellwood from the Conservative Party, he got himself into a load of toxic bother when he said, if you want to have growth, we should have some better relationship with the single market and even tiptoe back into the single market. That would be a surefire way to having some growth. He's right, though, isn't he?
Well,
yes.
In a technical sense, yes. But in the uncertainty, right? If you look at one of the outcomes, Nicky, there's a lot. The period of uncertainty was also a detriment to how the economy functions. So I honestly cannot see how you can permanently have the same argument time and time again. There are things that we could do that aren't about joining the single market. I mean, Canada has a better trade deal with the EU in many aspects. You could do a veterinary agreement. You could mutually recognise qualifications in the UK and in the EU.
They're more fundamental than that, people are saying.
Well, I don't think getting back into that argument is to anyone's benefit. Anyway. I think let's move practical things about how we move this forward.
Yeah, make
Otherwise,
it work.
it will never end. And the other, unfortunately, I've got to say is, until there's a consensus in this country, the rest of you wouldn't want that. So I think you do practical things, you make it better. You don't just try and relive previous arguments and never get through them.
Dominic from the Tory from the Council, his eyes are sparkling, wanted to come in here. I'm sorry, not just now. Professor Laura Coroneo from York University. Just a general picture on this particular area and why it was so in favour of Brexit. What was it? Was it a vote of disillusionment? Try something new?
Well, at the end, it was easy to sell Brexit as the change, something new, and people were tired of the old stuff and thought that things could only get better, and which I think is a common fallacy of people thinking that you are at the bottom, you can only go up, but I think there is no point in talking about Brexit. Sorry.
We call them Madonna mics in the business because they just pull it away from you. Just rub it. We'll persist. Anyway, yeah.
So I agree that there is no point in talking about Brexit now. So we are in a cost of living crisis, and we had a serious crisis of credibility in the fiscal policy of this country. So we should really put all our efforts to address this credibility crisis, and this has a cost. So there were some estimates yesterday from Financial Times and Bloomberg that were saying that at the peak, this was 20 billion cost. So, and now maybe with intervention of the Bank of England, this is 10 billion pounds cost in additional spending for servicing the debt, and which is just a byproduct of how the mini budget was delivered.
How much of it was the mini budget? Because there are huge global forces.
The mini budget was 45 billion pounds, but the problem is that the mini budget was released bypassing the OBR, which is the fiscal watchdog, and it is like going to get a loan without having a credit check. So the markets were worried about the fiscal sustainability of these plans, and they were not willing to buy government bonds. So the prices went down, and the government has started to pay higher interest, which means that the cost of borrowing for this country went up due to the fact that the government lost its credibility on its fiscal plans.
And the former Deputy Governor of the Bank of England and other people have been saying, "God, blimey, it's so bad. Well, like Italy now." How does that feel for you?
Well, the Bank of England has been working very hard. It was in a very difficult position because...
Well, we were discussing Italian politics earlier on.
Yes.
Your roots and, what do you think of that comparison when they're saying, we're on that level now, Italy? What do you think when you hear people saying that?
Well, when the market starts not being sure about the country, of course, if you're not sure about lending your money, you ask for higher rates. And this is what happens. And we always think that we are safe from that scenario, but we are not. So this is why we have institutions. This is why we have the OBR that sends projections for the fiscal sustainability of the plans. This is why we have a Bank of England that is an independent institution that has a mandate of 2% inflation. And the government, what did is question this mandate. So which means that as a result of the mini budget, what we're going to have is that we're going to have higher inflation for longer.
Okay, I understand the economics. Thank you for that. And let me see, where's with the man with his drink runs? Mick, there you are. It sounded like there's a man there with a drink, and boy, would that be good. But anyway, you have a drinks business.
I do.
Tell us about the situation you're in at the moment when it comes to your business, when it comes to your workers.
Yeah, we run a business called Clearly Drinks. I think in the region, most people fondly remember them as Villa Pop.
Does anyone
Round
remember?
of applause.
Yeah. There we are. You crowd pleaser, you.
We're really
Yeah.
proud. They've been around for
Yeah.
137 years here, so we're one of the oldest soft drinks manufacturers in the UK. Right now, in this absolute chaos, it's a political pantomime. When you're in the reality of it, right in the heart of it, trying to run a business and maintain it on a daily basis, it's almost impossible.
What are your costs then? Big costs?
Our costs have gone up on average in the last 12 months by over 50%. And that's not sustainable. There's only so much you can do to pass on to your customers, which in turn need to try and pass on to the consumer.
And what are the big items that have gone up that are necessary for the proper functioning of your business?
Everything starts with electricity for us. Energy. So my electricity went from 12p a kilowatt up to now 49p a kilowatt in the space of less than 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
And that is unsustainable. Now, obviously, electricity then has the knock-on to our raw materials that we buy because they need energy to manufacture. So hence why my materials now have gone up by an average of 50, sometimes 60%. CO2, I can't even get my hands on right now, which is just generated down the road in Teesside, has gone up from £132 a tonne in September last year to now over £1,500 a tonne. And that is not sustainable.
When you say it's unsustainable, what does that mean?
It means that, what I need to do is ensure that we maintain the security, the job security, the financial viability for this business for the long term to last another 137 years. But I'm heavily relying on my customer base, but also our workforce to help us get there.
What about your workers, getting people to do the jobs?
We struggle in certain areas. I think, obviously, coming out of the pandemic changed the whole labour market situation. I think Brexit definitely has had an impact as well. So we struggle with manufacturing teams, bringing in operatives, engineers for shift working. It's really challenging. We've got a much higher level of attrition now than we ever have. We've always prided ourselves on having a turnover of about 2%. Now we find it very difficult to attract, no matter what package we're offering. So it just exacerbates the challenge that we have.
You're going to stay in business?
We are. We've got fantastic support. We've got fantastic support from our investors, from our bank, but more importantly from the local community as well.
Give us a signal drink that you make that would...
Perfectly clear. Perfectly clear. So
if only it were.
It's spring water. It's flavoured spring water. You can get it on the shelves in Tesco's and Sainsbury's and everything. Not while it lasts.
What a disgraceful thing on the BBC this is. Goodness me. Get it in there.
Right.
All credit to you. All credit to you for that.
Cheers,
Another word from Andrea, and then we'll get it right. I'll be with you, John, as many people as we can. I want to hear all the voices. Andrea, come back on that.
On a non-political side, Mick here supports our soup kitchen. Okay, he's struggling like every other organisation, but he makes sure poor people are looked after.
Judy, did you want to say something?
It's no denying that the country is generally in an awful mess, but I feel that the population and the working population could actually do more to help the national cause. At the moment, we have various factions going on strike and demanding inflation-busting wage rises, which, as we've heard, it's not helping businesses, it's not helping the country in general. I think people need to...
Do you think they should not be on strike?
They shouldn't. I think we should be realistic about the sort of pay rises that people can expect. This is particularly poignant at the moment when they're actually talking about nurses striking. There is absolutely no way on this earth I would ever even contemplate such a thing. As a nurse, I didn't go into nursing for money.
So is the striking irresponsible at this time, yeah?
I think it is.
Susan, do you want to...
Sorry, I think that as well, given the way things are, when people are having to get to work as well, that means that it's impacting on what they are getting, their earnings, as far as what they've been able to get from A to B. And if they haven't got the money to get from A to B by way of what they are getting, how are they supposed to get there? And plus, I would also say to you as well that you nurses did an amazing job in the pandemic. Everybody pulled everything out of the fire in the pandemic. People have a right to expect a decent standard of living. They also have the right to make unhappiness plain, but in a respectful way. And if you're saying that they shouldn't go on strike, well, try telling that to the train drivers, try telling that to the rail workers who are now fearing about losing their jobs when it comes to that dreaded word of rationalisation.
Let Judy come back.
As a person of a certain age...
Same age as me, what are you talking about?
I've already lived through this process in the 70s and 80s where there were lots of strikes, the miners went on strike, there were spiralling wages, and it just fuelled inflation. And it doesn't help in the long term. I do sympathise absolutely with people on low incomes and people who are struggling, but moderation in all things. It is unrealistic to expect pay rises of 10% when the country's in the state it is.
Which is what actually Andrew Bailey, not so long ago, the Governor of the Bank of England, was saying. John McCabe from the Chamber of Commerce. Hi, John.
Hi, Nicky.
Yeah, it's challenging times, difficult times, interesting times, terrible times for people.
It's exceptionally difficult, and we've already heard Mick and Nicola before him perfectly describe the cost of doing business crisis that our members are talking to us about every day all across the North East. Our brilliant businesses in the North East have come through the cost and the complexity and the uncertainty of Brexit. They've come through the pandemic, and now they're dealing with this terrible cost of doing business crisis. There are no easy solutions to this, but there are things government can do pretty quickly that don't necessarily cost a huge amount and put a huge burden on the public purse. So, for example, government can start to review business rates. We've seen the inflationary figure for September coming out today.
Nicola, who runs
We've seen the inflation figure coming out today of 10%. Business rates are calculated and new rates come into effect from April, and the April increase is based on whatever the September inflationary rise was. So without business rates reform, businesses are going to be facing an extra 10% based on today's figures when their new bills come in April.
What about striking?
So what we need is not just a stronger economy, certainly here in the North East, but we also need a more inclusive economy.
But can the government accede to all those pay demands?
We need a more inclusive economy where more people have access to the economy and can play their part in the economy. Everybody deserves a fair wage for a fair day's work.
Absolutely. What does that mean? Yes or no on all the strikes?
Well, it means, so for example, again, other levers that government can pull that they have at their disposal, for example, on childcare costs. So we know that childcare costs right now are prohibitive. They prevent particularly young parents from either entering or re-entering the jobs market. So we can, if we're going to turn this problem around, we have to do it by supporting our businesses to grow and to create more and better jobs. And the way we'll do that is by supporting those businesses, by enabling them to grow. And that's how we'll grow the economy.
Yeah, there's a guy behind you with your hand up for ages, and I'll come to you in just a second. Over there with a nice shirt on, 3 along. Oh, 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Hi. I was just saying that I don't think people can afford to wait for the economy in the long term to stabilise. I think that they need to take drastic action because they can't even, afford to do basic things. And if they don't strike, then they're not going to be heard, and the economy won't help them. And I mean, they can't wait for 6 months or however long for them to actually get a fair wage, because in that time, who knows what could have happened? Could get worse. So.
Who thinks there should be people who are on strike at the moment should just hold their fire at the moment? Put your hand up if you think they should. They should just look at the situation and say this is not. Yeah.
Yeah, personally, I just think striking the motor is terrible. And I think Mick Lynch from the rail unions is, I tell you what, is an absolute slap in the face to people who are on salaries of less than £20,000 a year. Train conductors and train drivers are on salaries of over £70,000 a year. There are people in this audience right now who are making less, and I just think that's a joke. Personally, I think the cost of living right now, I think, people like nurses as well, I think they're not getting paid far enough what they do for the public. I personally think they should hold the strikes now until the cost of living crisis is under control.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to say that there are certain sections of society, like the fire service, the police service, and nursing staff, should never be allowed to strike. But I'd like to make one point. There's not been allowed to say today about support for what the government have done for people in this country. I accept that everybody's an individual, everybody has struggles and strife. I'm a pensioner, I'm on benefits.
How do you feel about the triple pension law going?
We don't know what's going to happen.
If it does go, if it's not in line with inflation.
Can I just say what I'm grateful about?
You can, yeah.
Thank you. I'm grateful that £650 was given out in July. Half of it, 326, was given out. The other 324 comes out on the 8th of November. There's another £300 on top of the winter fuel allowance. That's £500. If you're over 80, you get £600. I have switched to a variable account on my energy. My bill came to £67. My bill actually was nil because the government gave me £66
So you're grateful
on the 1st
for that,
of October.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for what the government is doing. There are struggles, and I accept that. Everybody's different. But I think there should be someone should say that they are grateful for what the government are doing for certain sections of society.
You've said it, Alan. Thank you very much indeed. Kevin, I'm going to come over here. We've got a taxi driver here and we've got a doctor. I'm going to speak to you. I haven't come to you yet, and I will do so. And Zaf, right with you. Kevin Peachy from the BBC. Just remind people what you do and who you are, Kevin.
So I'm Kevin Peachy. I'm the cost of living correspondent, covering all aspects of personal finance.
Life is busy. Striking.
It is. So there's obviously a lot of debate over wages, how the effect that has on inflation. I think if we sort of take a step back and look at some of the context here with the rising cost of living, we conducted a survey for the BBC of 4,000 people, and it found that 85% of those asked were worried about their finances. 56% said they thought their financial situation would worsen. Now, you compare that to a similar survey back in January, then it was 30% back then. So you can see that people's concerns are rising. And if we heard from Carla and Amanda earlier, we sort of reassure them, if you like, that they're not in an isolated situation here. And everybody here today is not isolated because it is a national issue, and for
we're all in this together, but not in a good way.
And for example, 9 out of 10 of those asked in our survey said they were delaying putting on the heating, something that Carla mentioned. And
I don't put my heating on, like I said, because I've got, as the gentleman was saying about getting the extra money and everything. Thank God for that, or thank the government for that, because the thing is, otherwise, pardon me, I'd be up that creek without paddle.
Yeah, the famous creek. What happens when it gets really cold?
Well, I just carry my little heater around wherever I am, or otherwise I get into bed and I sit and I read my book or whatever. I don't even put TV on because I can't afford it at the moment.
Was that your expectation when you were going to retire? Or did you expect to retire comfortably? Did you expect to retire with some dignity? I mean, do you expect to be carrying a heater around your room, individual rooms, heating yourself personally, not turning your TV on? The lady on the TV last night not putting a toaster on, a kettle? It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. And people are making excuses for the government. And I take into account. People are saying, yeah, okay, great, thanks, you've given us £300. It's my £300. It's my money you've given. It's not come out of thin air somewhere. They've given. Well, they're not giving it to me. But they're not giving it to me.
But getting some money.
But
So there are some. Just a second.
But they're not giving it to me. But it's my money, and it's your money. It's everybody's money. It's not being given out of thin air somewhere.
Yeah, but just respond. You are getting help, or people are getting help.
Right.
There is help out there.
But there's not help for everybody. I'll give you an example. Okay. My individual
Everybody
bills,
on benefits is getting help.
Okay, I'm not on benefits.
Well, there you
But it's
are.
a massive amount of people.
I said there was individual cases. I didn't
There's a
say
massive
everybody.
amount of people here, and I think there's obviously Tory councillors in the audience, and we've had Tory MP on. There are people inside here who are thinking, this is all about people on benefits, okay? I like to think that I'm a professional, I've got a decent salary, I am petrified about my bills. I got my notification that I was paying £200 a month last year for my gas and electric last year, okay? That's now changed. I'm now getting quotes through now from my current supplier of £890 a month, okay? This government's timed what it's doing now with rowing back from the repayment scheme, what they want to call it. They've rowed back from that to April now because they know full well in April everybody's going to go and turn the heating off.
Labour only gave it 6 months as well.
That's a different issue, Nicky. They only give it 6 months, but they always said 6 months. What they've done here, they've got the headlines to say we've done this for 2 years. They've been pushing that out for 2 years. Now they're going to turn it all back in April, and come April, everybody's going to turn the heating off, and we're going to be in the exact same situation this time next year.
Amanda, I'll be with you. And Amanda's got her hand up again, but do you want to come back here, Dominic McDonough from the council, Tory on the council?
Yeah, I mean, what you've just said there. I mean, I'm not quite sure what you said. Are you saying you don't want to pay as much tax because you said that's my money and I'm giving it to someone else? What's your point? I don't get it.
I don't mind paying tax at all, as long as that tax money is spent effectively.
But
This shower are not taxing people and spending effectively. They're throwing money all over the place without any kind of viewpoint for it. And that's the reason why we've had the 2-year deal, because nobody thought it out before they did it. They did it, they said it, and they've had to roll back from it.
Let Dominic respond.
Well, what the government is doing is they're putting the price cap in.
Let Dominic respond.
Well, if I can't respond, then...
You've had your say already.
Well, no, to be fair, Simon, you had a fair shot. Let's let him come back, yeah?
The government are putting a price cap in to try and keep prices down. This is a worldwide energy crisis. I've just been talking about to this gentleman. Ukraine was invaded. We're not getting gas through as much. Gas prices are going through the roof. Energy prices around the world are going through the roof. This government has put one of the biggest support schemes in place in the world to try and help people. Now, is it perfect? Of course it's not. Of course it's not. But it's the best that we can do at the moment. And I think we're talking huge amounts of money that's being thrown at this as well. But it's also going to cost a lot of money that we're eventually going to have to pay back.
Indeed. Let's speak to somebody again who's really who's on benefits and is really feeling it. And I saw your hand up there a few moments ago.
Disabled people aren't getting as much as everybody else. We get less. £150, 300 at the most if we get the second payment. And we are not getting the 600 and something pound even pensions are getting. We get less than anybody else. Certainly, maybe Universal Credit might get more, which I'm pleased for them.
What do you think about all the strikes at the moment? People going on strikes. Are they right to do that?
It's a good time too at the moment. The same with the government. Too much backstabbing. Things aren't settled enough, whether it's the Ukraine and in this country. It's a bad time to change prime ministers. We shouldn't have had Liz Truss in the beginning. And the strikes, no, I'd rather get rid of her. Even I would have Boris. But to be honest with you, the strikes, it's not a good time. They work hard for the money, and I'm really one for working hard, but they have to think about everything, about the whole country, where all the money is coming from. And as a previous business owner, it's not easy.
Yeah. Hi. Do you want to come?
Hi. So my name is Irish. I'm a student at Sunderland, and I am the EDI officer. And listening to
what's
that? Equality, diversity, inclusion, and listening to the fact that businesses are struggling during this period, the cost of living crisis, inflation going up, and everything. Could you imagine how students would feel? I mean, loads of students are working, but loads of students are struggling to pay their bills. I mean, a lot of landlords have separated bills inclusion. You get students paying £450 and we still have to pay for water, electricity, gas. And it's ridiculous how they cannot afford to pay these bills. And the government, obviously the war and all of the crisis that's going on and how everyone is finding it difficult to afford anything. But the older generations are suffering, the younger generations are suffering. And looking at the political side of things, you would want us to wait 2 years before we make a decision about our future.
You want an election now?
Who
wants an election now? By the way. Okay, let me take. There's a guy here. Thank you very much, Iris. There's a guy. You've had your hand up forever. Go on then.
I'm here sort of representing kinship carers. Now, I'm a kinship carer, and if the cost of living's bad for as it is, but for kinship carer, the cost of living's bad twice as much because they don't get no support. Some council give them support,
and you're saving money. You're saving the government money.
Oh God, we save. I mean, this is one of the things that gets in your throat, right? You see big, massive billboards all around the county. Come and foster with us. They pay these foster carers thousands of pounds. But when it comes to a kinship carer, they just say, right, get on with it. You're on benefits. That's it.
Who are you caring for?
My grandchildren. That's what a kinship carer is. A kinship carer is a person who takes the children from within the family for no fault of their own, who are bairns. They'll come, they'll have problems and stuff like that. They'll come from broken homes and stuff like that, and they'll go into kinship care. But then the councils, they just, right, there you go, on your bike. They don't give you any support, so you're on benefits. Basically, most kinship carers are like me, disabled or older, or grandpas and granddads and stuff like that, and they're saving councils in the country thousands of pounds.
So what's life like for you at the moment, trying to get by?
Very hard. It's very, very hard. I mean, you'll get the children coming home from school saying, can we go on this school trip, Grandad? And we'll say to them, well, no, son, we critically can't, because obviously school trip prices have gone up, but like everything else has gone up, and they'll come home, no, son, we can't go. And, the poor bairns will feel like left out, and, that the ones that, they are pointed out at schools sometimes, and it's all wrong.
OK, listen, Tony, thank you. And thank you, Tony, for what he does, because he's absolutely right. People like him, 1 second. 1 second. Just a quick one, and we're going to talk about the NHS in just a minute. On the quick one of strikes and what's happening at the moment, the industrial strife that reminds a lot of people of the 1970s. I wasn't even born in the 1970s, obviously. But do you think the likes of Jonathan Reynolds from Labour front bench, who thinks that they should be on the picket lines supporting the workers? Who thinks that they should be? All right, let's take it to you, and then you can. Why aren't you, Jonathan? Why has your leader said if you go on essentially he's going to take it on a case-by-case basis, but if you're on the front bench and you stand on a picket line, you're for it?
Well, the first thing I want to say is the average rate of wage growth in the UK is 5.5%. I think you said that earlier. Inflation today is at 10%. So people aren't getting inflation-busting pay rises. It's not the 1970s, and it's very important that people remember that. Look, where people are taking industrial action, they have absolutely right to do so. We'll support their right to do so. What people need from me is to replace Jacob Rees-Mogg and be this country's business secretary. That's my job. That's what I'm putting out. And also,
why is it mutually exclusive?
It's not. But look, the other message to get across: there are not, for instance, rail strikes in Wales where Labour's in charge. I don't believe there are rail strikes in Scotland where there's a different government in charge. So what we want to try and get across to people is it's not inevitable. You can get involved and sort these disputes out. No one goes on strike.
Andy Burnham
easily.
was on a picket line. He's one of the most influential Labour politicians in the country.
Andy's not trying to become a cabinet minister. He's my mayor in Greater Manchester. My job is to replace the business secretary and do that, and that's the right message to get out.
Yeah, Graham in a second. Yeah,
Seriously, Jonathan, the Labour Party was founded on the trade union movement. See, are you seriously saying, I better not stand on a picket line because I want to become a minister?
No, I'm saying...
You should be supporting your striking workers, the CWU,
but I'm saying the most important
RMT.
thing for Labour is to be the alternative to the Conservatives. Or otherwise, the problems we're seeing in the country will go on and on. And that is important to get across. And I will always be there supporting people, taking industrial action, recognising the reasons for doing so.
Conservatives aren't standing on the picket
lines.
lines.
So why did Chief sack Sam Terry then for standing on a picket line?
He didn't sack Sam for that reason. That was a different issue.
All right, well...
Right, where were we? I'll tell you where we were. You've had your hand up for ages, so we'll take your question and then we'll go to the NHS. And I did say I'd come to you, Graham. There's a lot of stuff going on in my head here. Quick one, Graham.
Thank you.
Striking. Head of the council.
I will be on a picket line if my leg allowed me to be on the picket line because the trade unions created us. We should be supporting our workers for a fair day's pay, for a hard day's work. I do not see why the pictorial of having senior politicians on picket lines in any way damages us. I think it would reinforce our standing with the workers.
He says he wants to, Jonathan says he wants to replace Jacob Rees-Mogg, and in order to do so, he can't stand on a picket line, was kind of what you said.
Well, I think the narrative there is that
and I'm not speaking on behalf of my shadow colleagues, because we're trying to show that we want to be the next government, they're trying to do the conscious thing of showing that we're working towards being that next government by doing all the policy planning and preparation for it. So the narrative is, let's not get involved in that very, very quick snapshot of...
So you get it, as politicians say, do you?
Yeah, I understand why they wish to have that approach. I don't necessarily agree with it, because I think a different approach would work better with us now, because clearly the real reason for this is 12 years of Tory mismanagement of the economy.
And you would say that because you're on the Labour Council. I want to do the NHS. I want you to make a very quick point, because you've had your hand up since right at the beginning. Make it quick.
Very quick. My name's Brian Moore, leader of the North East Party. Graham Miller is deliberately stopping a £200 million shipyard from opening in Sunderland, the Pallion shipyard. Harland and Wolff wanted to use it. You personally stopped it. Why have you stopped apprenticeships being created in Sunderland by stopping the Pallion shipyard from being reopened?
Do you know what? It is an issue, I'm sure, and it's an issue perhaps we can discuss later on. I want to move on to, and thank you for making the point. No worries there. NHS, Dr. Jessica Thompson, sorry?
It's a complete lie.
Okay,
I've got to be allowed to respond to that. It's a complete lie. The council has had no business come forward in the whole time I've been leader to ask to look at the use of the Pallion shipyard. Not one business come forward with a business plan for it. It's a complete and utter lie what the gentleman's stating, and I will not have him say it live without being able to say so.
And you've done
Nicky.
it, and you've responded, Graham. I hope you're satisfied that you've been allowed to respond, Graham. Are you? Graham?
Sorry?
Are you satisfied you've been allowed to respond?
I do appreciate it, thank you.
Right, okay, thank you. Doctor, is there a doctor in the house? There is. Have you got any herbal remedies to calm everybody down?
Unfortunately not.
Okay, herbal remedies not your thing, obviously. What's going on with you at the moment? Tell us about your practice and what you're doing, and the people who are coming to you, what they're coming to you for.
So I work...
A lot of mental health stuff, isn't
Yeah, so I work as a GP in Gateshead, which is just down the road. And then, so I work as a salary GP there, and then I've got an additional role as the clinical lead for mental health in Gateshead as well. So we're seeing all sorts, and I suppose just listening to all the stories here today, you know, it's all really worrying, and I think we've got to remember that this is on the back of COVID, and a lot of people's mental and physical health has taken a massive hit during that, and so we're entering into the winter, and we're entering into the cost of living crisis with lower health resilience, and we're already seeing, you know, frequently we're seeing or hearing from people who have got 2 jobs, or who are missing meals, or who are...
So what are people saying to you when they come, and how do they... Because it's not easy, you know, to talk about mental health, is it? It's not easy to actually go in and say, this is happening in my head, and I desperately need help. It's a big step.
Yeah.
You know, so what are people saying to you? Is it something that you're kind of gleaning from them? Actually, you think, oh, this person might have a specific problem, or are they saying to you, I'm depressed?
So both. So there's there's lots of people with underlying mental health issues who are facing a very bleak winter of worry and stress from financial things and heating and all of the cost of living problems that we've been discussing here today. But also people are developing sort of worry, stress, just because they're just, you know, working really hard. They don't know how they're going to sort of survive the winter, feed their kids. So we're seeing a lot of new people coming in stressed. And obviously we know that people with a mental health burden, or who are struggling with their mental health, they quite often are struggling with work or struggling with their physical health. So it's not just, I suppose, the mental health aspect of it as well.
I'll be with Teresa and Shanaz in a second, but Carla, I want to hear from you, and we have been hearing from him today, because what you're saying is so important. Is it on mental health?
Yeah, I suffer from depression and anxiety. I can work, all right, but then there's other times when I shut down. And I can't do anything. I can't go anywhere. I don't want to see people. I won't answer my phone. You know, and then on top of which, you've got all this problem about having to look after yourself. I've got 2 cats. Thank God I've got my 2 cats, because sometimes I've been so low that I've actually wanted to do something to myself.
Oh my goodness me! Listen, we need to make sure you get some help and speak to somebody as well, because it sounds to me like are you getting help for what?
Yes, I'm lucky that I've got my friends and I've got my support work, my support group kind of thing. But I feel sorry for this. There must be so many people out there that haven't got people.
I know. And Carla, what you say as well is about your cats is so important, because for so many people, their cat and their dog is a lifeline. It's support. It takes them away from a lonely place. It's a friend. And the cost of cat food and the cost of dog food, and I know there's that too. And everything. Teresa, tell me about what you're doing.
I'm Teresa Graham, practice manager in Gateshead, and we have seen the impact of the cost of living crisis on all of our patients. Many of them, they don't have the basics for health. They don't have a roof over their head that is secure. They don't have warmth. They don't have social connections. They're very isolated. They don't have nutritious food, and they just don't know where to turn. One of the things that we've actually planned to help support our patients with this is a cost of living cafe, whereby we are setting up a drop-in so patients can pop in each month. We have somebody from the Citizens Advice Bureau coming in to advise on energy and all of the ways that people can kind of make their homes more efficient, talking about benefits, warm homes discounts, etc. We also have Gateshead carers coming in to support people who are caring for other people. We have our social prescribing link workers, and they can offer advice and support and signpost to lots of different organisations.
Are you busier now than you ever have been?
Busier now than we ever have been.
Do you think it's going to get even more frantic?
Absolutely. It's becoming so busy, and patients are coming with problems that are not particularly, it's not always a medical problem, it's actually a social problem.
And how do you deal with people coming? You've got a big burden as well with people actually unloading their problems on you. That's not an easy task. You've got a lot to deal with as well.
Absolutely, but I think we have good support around us, and actually in GP practices these days, it's not just GPs and nurses anymore. We have these additional roles like social prescribing link workers, where actually they are just a font of all knowledge. They know all of the organisations in the area that can support with lots of different issues. But actually it's about supporting our staff as well, because they are often going through this as well.
Completely. Shanaz, I'll be with you, but just Denise from Citizens Advice. I mean, we heard, it's heartbreaking. Carla expressed it so powerfully and so well, and Carla is not alone. There are lots and lots of people who are on her road as well. What advice is available? I mean, just anyone watching now, Citizens Advice, what can you give people?
We would recommend that everybody starts with a benefit check to see if there's anything they may be entitled to. There is help out there, there is support. We have a very strong voluntary sector in the UK and in Sunderland. There's a lot of support out there. Seek help. You aren't alone. There's a lot of help out there for people, but again, they need to speak up and they need to come to us. But we've seen a huge rise in the amount of mental health issues that people are coming to us with.
But you're there to help. Shanaz, I'll be with you, but Sophie, and another hand that's been up for aid. I'm sorry if I can't get around everybody. It's been so busy. So many people have got so much to say.
Yeah, there's lots of obviously.
Tell us about yourself first.
So I'm here. I work with quite a few charities in the area, but I also have a husband who's a teacher, and I'm a governor of a multi-academy trust in the region as well. And there's been a lot of talk about the NHS and the pensioners, but actually I think we need to talk about the young people that are being severely impacted by this cost of living crisis. This is a generational crisis that we are facing. Schools have had 12 years of austerity measures. They are feeling the frontline impact of that in terms of mental health challenges, antisocial behaviour, and it is the teachers and the teaching assistants and the staff in schools that are the frontline impact of that. Alongside cost of or reduction in costs for frontline services, be it NHS mental health services, be it crime and police services, it is teachers who are facing the real living issues that the kids are facing at this moment in time.
And Zaf, as a taxi driver, what about your costs?
Spiralling. The fuel costs have gone up 35-40%. We got I think just over 5% increase in our fares this year, which doesn't really cover the cost of fuel increase.
Have you got contract work as well?
Well, just school contract work, so through the firm. But that's going to be dwindling as well. I think businesses are closing down because of the energy costs, and the fuel costs then spiral with your shopping, everything like that, and then your family costs are going up and up.
There are fewer taxi drivers every time I go to when I speak to the taxi drivers.
It's a national issue. But,
it is a national issue, but
you're not going to attract people to it.
Does it help you, the fact that you've got more business because there's fewer drivers?
You can only work so long. You're busy, but it's not like you're earning enough to pay your fuel bills and your energy costs and the cost of living for your shopping for the house. You're not really saving anything. You're not earning any more than you were in the past because everything's gone up.
Hey, Chrissy, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm fine. Tell us about your life at the moment.
So I'm a disabled student. I'm studying at the University of Sunderland, studying media production. And even though like I do try and like keep myself to myself, I do relate to a lot of these struggles that people have been talked about because I've went through a lot. Someone like me who's a disabled student, I've had to really fight for like things that would support me. So, for example, coming to university, I had to apply for a disabled students allowance, and there was quite a struggle with that. Because of my situation, at first I had to really fight to get taxi support to and from university.
You're partially sighted, yeah?
Yeah, I'm partially sighted, yeah. So I've always struggled with that, and I've always, even though I've had support, I've always been afraid to ask for it in times because, like Amanda was saying before there, people do sort of give you that judgmental look. I've had that through school a little bit. And as a student, I really feel like the government needs to basically give us a voice more because we are really struggling. Like a lot of we rely on student finance, which everyone gets different amounts of. I'm lucky enough to get the maximum, but even then, I give quite a lot of that to my mum to support with her needs because she's a single parent. And I just feel like over the past 12 years, the government's really not given us that voice. It's like the older generation have said like younger people, they need to be seen and not heard, but we do need to be heard in the.
COVID was a massive blow to so many young people. So what are you studying again?
Media production. So
excellent choice, if I may say so.
I will say I am actually I'm looking to go into radio. So
stay off my turf, mate. Okay, no, that's great. Like Steve as well. Hi, Steve.
Hi. It was just picking up on a couple of the points I made. Sunderland's got a smashing...
Steve? I don't mean that rudely.
Many people ask. I'm Steve Duncan. I work with VCAS, which is Voluntary Community Action Sunderland, which is the infrastructure organisation that supported 300 plus voluntary sector organisations over next year, a 50-year period. So every year we take a survey of what's happening in the voluntary sector so we know where we're going to need to deliver more stuff. And every year we get a 56% rise in the small organisations because the majority of small organisations who see more demands on their services and less income coming in. So that's year on year. COVID had a massive impact on the voluntary sector. By default, a lot of people that are volunteers are somewhat grey around the gills because that's life's experiences that have led them to that. We were told and they were told to stay in and they've stayed in. It's really, really difficult for the voluntary sectors to actually bring the people out, the volunteers back into the voluntary sector to actually do more work. So you've got a catch-22. You've got all of COVID, you've got all of the worries of the world.
You find that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what's happening in the voluntary sector, the third sector, is there is an increase in demand for the services that are on the front line because of the reduction in public spending. But at a time when disposable income is going down, so charitable donations are going down, people are having less time to volunteer and they've got higher baseline costs. So actually these critical services in the voluntary sector, third sector, are under the cosh at the minute. We're probably right now, we need them more than ever before because they are propping up the NHS, they are propping up the education.
And it's more difficult for them than ever, so that's the paradox.
And what effectively is happening is there is a perfect storm coming for young people in this country who are watching their parents or their grown-ups go through real difficult life choices but they are also at a time where the support networks are shrinking around them, so they are becoming more vulnerable to making the wrong choices in life.
We are in a difficult world. What are you doing for people, Shanaz, in that difficult world at the moment?
So I'm Shanaz Stansfield. I'm a practice manager at Oxford Terrace and Rolling Road Medical Group in Gateshead. The issues that we're talking about today aren't new. So I've been a practice manager for 15 years, and we've seen... 15.
Oh, it's just about...
Though I have been in the NHS for 43 years.
You're incredible.
No, I think so, but the cost of living rises that I almost like exacerbated those issues exponentially. So when we had austerity, we saw the impact that had on people and people's physical as well as their mental health. Then Brexit has had a financial impact on people. Then COVID came along, and all those things that we could not survive as a GP practice without your support in the voluntary organisations. So COVID came along, and then now we've got and the issues around universal credit. When that £20 was reduced, with each of those issues happening, we see a corresponding increase in demand in general practice. And that were 15 years ago, my practice was full of people with a health need. Now my practice is full of actually people with a social need that impacts their health, and we don't have the corresponding social services to support them. And we're looking at those numbers now. So we're dealing with more complexity. We're dealing with bereavement from COVID. We're dealing with almost every other person across the demographic of our patients having a mental health or anxiety type thing. And, you know, so there is this issue about a preoccupation of GP appointments, but I don't think people understand what general practice does behind the scenes. And behind the scenes, what we're doing is we're supporting our communities. We're addressing this cost of living rises. The social prescriber link workers that Teresa talked about, they were brought in to help us with health need. One of our social prescriber link workers, Dawn, spends all her time, literally her full time, supporting people with housing issues. We have Julie, who supports people with mental health issues. We have others, actually nurses in the NHS.
Oh, incredible, incredible. I just want to hear other... Very quickly, Jessica, just while you're there, governments have to make difficult decisions and tough decisions in the financial, fiscal, monetary context in which we find ourselves for all sorts of different reasons. And if they do have to trim the NHS budget, is there anything to trim?
Gosh, no, I don't think so. We're so stretched, and that's worrying, I suppose.
There's somebody right at the back here who has got their hand up. I'll just come around. And it's Marcia. Hi, Marcia. How old are you?
I'm 17.
Yeah, have your say.
So it was a bit about what the man over there said, about young people having a voice. So I've only just moved to the area. I've moved from Greater Manchester, so I was living in Rochdale. I was part of Rochdale Youth Cabinet and a bunch of other kind of similar things, because I'm just really interested in politics and things like that.
What do you think about what's happening at the moment in politics?
Oh, very chaotic. I think there's been a lot of bad decisions, but what I wanted to say was when I was in Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham was kind of a lot in contact with the youth cabinet that I was part of, and the MYP, which is Member of Youth Parliament. He was called Adam Rennie at the time, and he was conversing a lot with Andy Burnham, and they actually created something called R-Pass, which was a bus and tram pass, and it means that from 16 to 18 you get free bus travel everywhere in Greater Manchester. And coming back to the northeast, it was a very big shock for me when I had to pay so much for travel all the time to school or to clubs. And again, what this girl in front of me said before about like students having to pay, especially for uni, like the fees of accommodation and everything is so much. I think that travel is also a massive thing. So if
excellent point, everybody.
If new things could be introduced, that'd be great.
Excellent point. Yeah. Yeah, and how are we for time? It's so many people with so much to say. Police and Crime Commissioner Kim McGuinness, we can get the microphone over to you now. There is the unfortunate consequence. Some people do cross the moral line. There is more crime at times like this. It is inexcusable, but it is understandable to an extent, isn't it?
Look, people living in deprivation are much more likely to become a victim of crime. And that is
also
an absolute
to commit
fact.
crime as well because of
mums and dads tell me that what they're worried about is that poverty, deprivation, that living without makes their young people vulnerable to criminal gangs who will willingly criminalise young people, who will willingly pull them into their racket to make money so that they can benefit from the cost of living crisis. But my view is that we have got to be much better at preventing this. We've talked an awful lot about this financial crisis. It is a crisis. People are feeling it every single day. What we now need to be doing is investing in those young people, investing in family services, youth services, so that people have the support around them to be able to have that aspiration. This place is brilliant. We've talked a lot about, the negative things that are going on in this country at the moment. This region, this place has got so much going for it. The people here are aspirational beyond belief. They do incredible things, but they are being forgotten about. And so we need investment in those public services. We need those voluntary sector organisations to be properly funded so that we can prevent crime, prevent mental health crisis, and give people the support that they need.
Okay, everyone put your hands down on the issues that we've been talking about. I only want hands up for people to tell me what is brilliant about Sunderland and what is brilliant about this part of the world. And I'm going to whiz round you and get a thought from all of you. What's fantastic about this place?
That in times of trouble, the people in the northeast absolutely pull together. I have never seen such kindness in people's hearts as I've seen the last couple of years.
Who else? Graham, what's brilliant about this place?
The people. I've lived here 30 years and the people in Sunderland are great.
Okay, what's brilliant about this place, Nigel?
The community and the ability to regenerate and be positive.
James, just a word. What's brilliant about Sunderland?
The young people. They're absolutely incredible and resilient.
Okay, John?
Nicky, North East England Chamber of Commerce has worked with the voluntary community and with the private sector to produce an employers' financial wellbeing toolkit so we can get direct support and advice and tips to employers to help their workforce through this difficult period.
Okay. What is remarkable, amazing and unique and heartwarming about this particular part of the world? Steve?
You've touched on it already. It's the people that has got in the voluntary sector, the people who went out in COVID and actually delivered stuff to people, the small voluntary sector groups who survive on less than £10,000 a year, which is around about 30% of the voluntary sector organisations in Sunderland who get very little support. They're absolute stars.
Amazing people.
And the Sunderland Football Club.
The Sunderland Football Club.
Yeah, the most amazing thing.
They've had their moments. And just a positive, Andrew. You run the soup kitchen, isn't it? The food kitchen.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're the positive side of poverty. We're dignified. We don't ask loads of questions.
What people like here?
Do you know something? We're hard-working people, but we get the job done. We've got lots of people behind us.
I'm going to ask a politician what the people are like in his neck of the woods, and I know he's not going to say, well, they're a bit iffy. But listen, it is a place with incredible heart. Jonathan Reynolds.
It is an incredible heart, but also incredible industry, incredible history. I mean, there are things like the Nissan car factory in this area that are not just, nationally world-renowned, but world-class, and that's what we can do. But also, I'm always proud to say I come from Sunderland because of how people like this have reflected how passionate they are about the area and what it means to them.
Yeah, and all sides of the argument as well. Here's the other side of the argument, in one sense, the political argument. I'm just trying to get a microphone to you. I'm going to have to walk along the aisle here like an annoying person in a cinema. Dominic, what's brilliant about Sunderland?
It's the spirit of this city, the spirit of these people. We're the best place in the world, let's be honest with you.
Oh, hang on. Hang on. Come on, let's not take it. It's a great place. Let's not take it too far. Edinburgh, yeah.
We also have a football team who sometimes perform now and again, but we also have the best beaches in the UK as well. But don't tell any Southerners because we don't want them to come up and spoil it.
Yeah. About there, what's great about this place?
The support the schools are given with what they've got from the government. They're doing the best they can, which really helps us.
Yeah, the best they can, which really helps it. And Chrissy, what do you love about it here?
For me, I always say this, the arts. I feel like the arts in Sunderland are really underappreciated. We've got great theatre, we've got a great music scene, and I just feel like the art in Sunderland, if you ever come here, it's what you need to see.
And there's a lady... You had lady back here, Kerry, you had a very spirited exchange with Paul Scully, who was kind enough to join us, the Conservative frontbencher, and you were quite angry. Don't be angry anymore. Be positive. Be positive about this place. What is it about where you live and where you grew up that you love so much? What is it?
Well, I'm from Teesside, so I've got to say a Palmer.
We're gonna listen. We're in our final minute now, and there are huge challenges. And I want a last word from Amanda, who gave us such a picture of her life and her struggles. And you need all the support you can get right now.
Are you getting enough?
No. The government needs to give more people who are disabled, not just myself, but other people, more help. We don't want to be off work. We want to do more. But if you just can't do it, you can't do it. And it's frustrating and less looking down on us.
Thank you all very much indeed. Thanks for your time this morning. Thanks for taking part. That's all we've got time for. But what a great audience you've been. Wonderful contributions.
The voice of the UK. This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
With the news at 11 o'clock, I'm Lisa McCormick. Rising food prices have pushed the rate of inflation back into double figures and its highest level in 40 years. The rate rose to 10.1% last month after a slight dip in August. The government's acknowledged that families are struggling and says that it's prioritising help for the most vulnerable. Lisa Nandy is Labour's Shadow Community Secretary.
The value of benefits has fallen very substantially in recent years and people are already struggling to eat. 1 in 7 people are skipping meals or going without food because they just simply can't afford it. And we just can't go on like this. We can't put people through more anxiety, more worry and more pain. They're either people who are disabled, who are unable to work, or they're people who are in work whose wages just aren't rising quickly enough.
Liz Truss will face a crucial test of her leadership this lunchtime when she faces her first Prime Minister's question since scrapping most of the mini-budget. She's likely to face questions about pensions after Downing Street refused to commit to increasing payments in line with inflation. In the next hour, an independent panel will publish the findings of its review into maternity services at East Kent Hospital's NHS Trust. The inquiry heard from 200 families with cases dating back to 2009. They say the concerns were repeatedly brushed aside. The inquiry has been led by Dr Pill Kirkup, who has previously investigated Morecambe Bay maternity services in 2015.
I did not imagine for one moment that I would be back, or that anybody would be back in 7 years' time, talking about a rather similar set of circumstances. This cannot go on. We have to address this in a different way. We can't simply respond to each one as if it's a one-off, as if this is the last time this will happen. We have to do things differently.
East Kent Hospital's NHS Trust has apologised ahead of the release of the report and says the findings will help them make improvements. Mason Greenwood's been released from custody after a court hearing this morning. The Manchester United footballer, who's accused of rape, attempted rape and assault, was arrested at the weekend for breaching his bail conditions. Russia's began evacuating people from the occupied city of Kherson, which Ukrainian forces are trying to recapture. The Russian general in charge of the invasion has admitted that his forces are facing what he's called a difficult situation. And new research suggests that people over the age of 50 who sleep less than 5 hours a night could be at risk of chronic health problems. The study was carried out by a joint team from London and Paris who followed 8,000 people. Time for the sport now. Here's Delith.
Thanks, Lisa. Good morning. Rhys Topley has been ruled out of the T20 World Cup with an ankle injury, giving England a major selection headache just 3 days before the start of their campaign. Topley is currently the second highest ranked pace bowler in T20 international cricket and has been in fine form. Ireland boosted their prospects of reaching the Super 12 stage of the tournament with a 6-wicket win over Scotland in Hobart earlier. Also in their group, West Indies have set Zimbabwe 154 to win their match. Henry Moran is watching.
Good start from Zimbabwe, 29 without loss after just 2 overs. If they can win this game, it would effectively knock the two-time champions West Indies out of this competition. There would be a mathematical scenario that would allow West Indies to qualify, but it would be a highly improbable set of results that would see them go through. So really important the next hour and a half or so to see who will make it through to the Super 12s in this group. Ireland sensational earlier today. Curtis Campbell leading the way with a magnificent innings of 72 not out from 32 balls. Ireland and Scotland both still in with a chance of making it through to the Super 12s.
There's commentary of the West Indies match on 5 Sports Extra, and Ailish McColgan's new European and British records in the 10,000 metres are to be struck off. It's after organisers of the 2022 Great Scottish Run revealed the 10k course was in fact 150 metres short. The Commonwealth champion set the records in the race in Glasgow earlier this month.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live. Listen live on digital, online, smart speaker, or the BBC Sounds app.
Let's have a look at the latest weather now then. We've got some heavy rain moving its way through Northern Ireland and the Isle of Man at the moment. Some thunderstorms mixed in with that. It's pushing its way into the southwest of Scotland and it'll continue to move its way north and eastward for the rest of this afternoon. Still some showers though are likely to affect parts of Wales, the southwest of England, although perhaps not quite as many here than we're first expecting this morning, so a little bit drier. Some sunny spells though towards the far north of Scotland, towards eastern and southeastern areas of England, and that will stay that way through the afternoon. And it's quite windy as well. You'll probably notice that, especially around southern and western areas of the UK. And it's mild. Temperatures in the south 18 to 20 degrees Celsius. Further north across England and Wales, we're looking at highs about 15 or 16 degrees, and then towards Scotland and Northern Ireland 9 to 13 Celsius. As we go into tomorrow, well, further showers likely to spread in across the UK, but again, they'll be heavy and thundery with a fairly brisk wind. Simon King, 5 Live Weather.
Relax and unwind.